Hello, and welcome to episode 32 of The Board. I'm Gavin Coughlin, Agile coach here at Boost Agile, and today we're going to be talking about one of the most misunderstood, possibly, of the 4 Agile values, which is customer collaboration over contract negotiation. I'm joined by...
Hi there, my name is Paul Llewellyn. I'm also an Agile coach here at Boost. As you can see, it's just the two of us on the couches today. Kirsten's actually overseas on holiday. She's in London and Paris, so hopefully she's having good times.
I'd imagine she is.
Yeah.
So
Gavin and I decided to talk about the Agile value customer collaboration over contract negotiation, because often when we're working with teams, we will remind them of the values and how what they're saying kind of holds with the values, in terms of like how it compares back to, or if they're stuck on something in particular, then think about the Agile values and how they might apply in this situation.
Yeah, and I think it's, I've been having a lot of conversations recently with people about doing Scrum, and a lot of companies want to do Scrum, and they just learn how to do that, and they learn all the right artifacts and the right meetings to do. But don't necessarily concentrate on the Agile values, and that's missing the point entirely, because then you're doing Agile rather than being Agile.
That's right. And so, and I know that, for example, the guys from IC Agile, Ahmed Siddiqui or Sidki, sorry, I mispronounced his name. They talk about this Agile mindset quite a lot, and I think really to go from doing Agile to being Agile, you really have to think about the underlying principles, i.e. the manifesto, the Agile manifesto, and how that works in your situation. Yeah,
absolutely. And if we ever have issues with our Scrum projects, if there's ever things going wrong, we tend to look back on the 4 Agile values, and they help us find sort of the root cause of what's going on. And the Agile mindset is the hardest thing to be and to become. It's really, really easy to do Scrum or to do Kanban and ignore all that, and it'll probably help because you'll be visualizing your work and breaking things down into iterations, so it'll probably give you some benefits, but certainly won't give you all the benefits and the true benefits of being Agile.
And to me, like I've said this many times before, I know, probably on this show, but to me, Scrum is a set of training wheels, and unless you understand the principles of underneath Scrum that are holding it, then you can't take those training wheels off.
Yeah, that's right.
And so the team will often come to us and say, "Well, we want to do," i.e., the most common thing is we want to stop retrospectives. We don't see the value in the retrospective, and then we really have to ask them how that sort of compares back to the Agile values and what they're and the Agile principles, and understand that teams, we do get the greatest benefit if we're analysing our what we're doing, and having some empirical sort of nature to our work, because otherwise we can't improve, and we'll just be doing the same things over and over again. Exactly. And as Einstein said, that is the definition of madness.
Was it Einstein who said that?
I think so. Yeah, doing the same things over and over again, expecting different results.
Yeah. And when we do Scrum workshops for people, we always go through the values first of all, and then we take them through usually the Scrum process, and we say this is a framework which helps support these Agile values. Yeah. And it's because it's hard to look at the Agile values and put a framework in yourself that's going to help support that. So Scrum is just a great way of doing that. But that brings us back to customer collaboration over contract negotiation. That's one that's people find hard to understand sometimes.
It comes up, it comes up so many times for us, especially because we're a vendor as well as a consultancy. We often we're negotiating contracts often, in terms of the number of projects that we do, but also those contracts. I was thinking the other day, because I see these contracts I see little mini contracts popping up in each or every aspect of the Agile kind of approach, where people are trying to hold the team to, you said you would do this and it would include this and so on, or they're trying to set that contract up ahead of time and not realizing that they're actually, by creating that contract, they're actually going to minimize the value that's delivered. And so we'll often it is customer collaboration over contract negotiation. It's not saying that contracts aren't important. It's saying that you're but we think you will get a better result the more you collaborate. And so going back to the beginning of the process, when we start a new project, for example, one of the worst things we can hear from one of our customers is you're the experts, you build it, because exactly. we don't know what they want to build. We don't understand what their vision is. We can build software, we build a lot of software, we are the experts in building software, but we don't know what they want at the end of the day.
Well, that's right, because somebody can give you a very thorough list of requirements, but any individual or any group that goes through those requirements can read them in different ways and have different ideas about what that means. So if you don't have that collaboration all the way through a project, you're just going to build something that you think the customer needs rather than what the customer actually needs. And I think contracts a lot of the time are, people spend a lot of time locking everything they possibly can in place before they get it signed off and start, because there's a lack of trust there.
That's
and
right.
They want to cover themselves.
And this kind of, the other thing I noticed as well is when you're saying, you're saying this is the requirements, this is the scope of our work, this is the contract essentially for what you're going to deliver, because people, they see it as the only opportunity they've got to get this work done. So they just add to those requirements, stuff that they don't really need, because it's like a last, this is the only opportunity we've got to do this work. So let's get as much in there as we can, even if it's a very low value. They're just and actually going to cost much more money to develop. They'll kind of present you with this huge set of requirements, and half of them aren't necessary.
Exactly, and in terms of the trust that people feel contracts help put in place, the customer collaboration is something that fosters absolute trust with people, because you're there. Throughout the day, and it's complete transparency. Nobody,
that's right.
Nothing can be hidden or brushed under the carpet. And one thing I read today was I can't remember who said it, but they were doing a training course for people in Agile, and they're talking about this very value, and they asked the whole group, can you put your hands up if you foster close collaboration with your customer? And everybody's hands went up, and they're all very proud of themselves. And they said, okay, and keep your hands up if you have talked to the customer within the last 5 days. And most of the hands went down.
Wow.
And that's obviously not customer collaboration, because a week is a long time to go without talking to your customer.
It's not close customer collaboration, that's for sure.
No, it's not. And obviously collaboration means communication, because that's the most important part of that collaboration.
Yeah. I think my big focus, and what I've witnessed recently, is this: what happens when contracts fail is the litigation, essentially, and the kind of us and them thing starts popping up. You get the blame game. You said this, you wanted this, you said in requirement 4.3.10.1 or whatever, blah blah blah, and we've delivered blah blah blah, and then the customer comes back and says, well, it's not what we wanted. And so it's just litigation, people arguing about the failed contract. Most of your time gets spent litigating, and very little time gets spent resolving the problem.
That's right.
And all the ideal outcome is, that's not what you wanted. Okay, let's let's do the work to work out what it is you need. And is the ideal response. Exactly,
and I recently was involved in a project that wasn't being run in an agile way.
Yeah.
And there was a large contract with a list of requirements. It was, I think, 250 must-have priority requirements.
Yeah.
But obviously working in an agile space, so it's bringing a lot of that to the project, and just discussing with people that this was unnecessary and completely unrealistic and a little bit nuts as well. But it was very difficult, because the negotiations went on for a long time, going over these requirements, and I say nothing's going to meet all 250 requirements. So that just got really tense and really put everybody in a bad place, and everybody was butting heads about this contract, and nothing had even started being built yet. Yeah.
Huge impediment to even just starting the work.
Yeah, absolutely.
How are they going to get anything built in that scenario? That's just going to, everyone's going to be too busy covering their backsides.
Yeah, exactly. And it was all about that contract. It was all that's all it was, and that huge document. And it's soul destroying to see that much time being wasted on that, really, and no actual progress being made.
So, and that's why we work so hard with our teams to create this environment of trust, because trust is fast. Trust is incredibly fast. If you can do things and know that you're not going to get into trouble because you've just because you've done your job, then you get things achieved much quicker.
That's right.
There's a great book which is on my reading list at the moment, which is I've only read excerpts from it, which is called The Speed of Trust, I think, and it talks about how valuable trust is to especially to a team of developers, software developers, where they're building something that's complex. Technologically, it's going to be complex or new, and they're normally solving complex problems. They're not going to get it right first time.
No.
In that environment, we talk about failing fast, and so that you can, get that information, surface it up as quickly as possible, be completely transparent. And you can't be transparent unless you've got trust. If every time you come back to the product owner and say, we can't do this, or this is really hard, this is going to cost you much more than we thought it was going to cost, and the product owner starts freaking out because they're not going to get what they want. We're not going to get anywhere in that project. We're not going to move forward. We have to sit down as a team and work out what's possible, and work as a team to get over those humps together. Yeah,
and there's different ways to get that sort of customer collaboration. It all came out from, I suppose, the foundation of this value sort of came from extreme programming in a way, because they demanded that the customer be in the office or wherever you're working with the team. Working side by side with them, which is fantastic, but obviously not possible in a lot of real world situations. We try to make that happen at Boost when we can, and it's brilliant when it does happen. We have a product owner in the office for the last 2 weeks at the start of a project, and it's worked incredibly well. But if that's not possible, which it usually isn't, you just have to find other ways to allow that communication to always happen. It's great if those people can make it to the stand-up and be available for any catch-ups after the stand-up. If you can have people available on Skype throughout the day, it's fantastic. If not, at least available by phone or instant message. Just make sure that they're always there, so if the team have a question or are about to make a decision about a direction they're going to go in, they can get in touch with the product owner and make sure that they don't go off track.
That's right.
And we still have contracts at Boost for our Agile projects, obviously. And as everybody will know, it's not that you ignore contract negotiation, it's still there, it's just that collaboration is more important. But we've changed our contracts, we've started working in this way, and we, rather than have fixed scope, fixed time frame, fixed budget, which used to mean that we were working nights and working weekends, we have a capped time and materials. That's right. Contract.
Capped time and materials. And just going back to what you're saying about fixed scope, fixed price, fixed budget, fixed scope, fixed price, fixed schedule. Get those three right. The thing that suffers at the end of the day is not just us working weekends and over. It's the quality of the overall product. The final delivery is, so you might get what you want on time and to budget, but it will not be of a high enough quality to take you forward. And
it's usually not on budget for somebody. It might be on budget for the client, but not on budget for the vendor. Somebody's going to lose out in that situation.
So the capped time and materials, we realised that we needed to work on time and materials if we were going to be successful as a company. But of course that doesn't really work well for the client, because that's just
a lot of risk for them.
A lot of risk, exactly. So in the capped approach, you're saying, well, we will deliver something. We will deliver something of value for you within this time frame for this budget.
And work with them to make sure that the important stuff has been worked on and that we've prioritised stories in that way.
That's right, and continually work with them on reprioritizing those stories. So at the end of the project, they absolutely get the highest value delivered in that for that budget. And that's been really successful, hasn't it?
It's worked really well, and it doesn't work for every client. It does involve still a bit of a trust, because a lot of people are still used to working in that way, where they give you the list of requirements and they give you the budget and they just want that done. No matter what, they want all of that stuff done. So it does involve. I suppose you can't work in a truly agile way if you don't get that trust from both those parties from the outset anyway, because they have to understand that things are going to change. As soon as you start working on something, things are going to change and ideas are going to emerge, and what you thought at the start is going to be very different than how you think about the project at the end of it.
What's interesting is, and this is an idea taken from Toyota, I was reading about the way that Toyota approach that they have maintained long-term relationships with their suppliers, and the way they do that is a kind of bonus or fine system. So if the supplier comes in under ahead of time or under budget, then they both share the benefits of that. So basically they've worked out a deal where they split the reward. So the client, if they come in under budget, Toyota will say, okay, you came in under budget, let's halve the difference, and you can have that so the supplier gets rewarded for coming in under budget, and vice versa. If they go over time, then they halve, or they have some arrangement where the supplier gets fined, but they get fined equally, if you like, and they get rewarded equally. So they're working as a team. Yeah,
I read about that approach, which isn't it? I've never seen that happen in my experience, but I have read that Toyota go down that road, and it sounds like a pretty interesting idea.
It means that they've established a long-term relationship, high degree of trust with their suppliers. I mean, I know Toyota have got some issues at the moment with a massive recall and so on, but they are one of the if not the number one car manufacturer in the world. They are very high up, and they've been using a lean approach to building cars since the 1950s. They've been highly successful, and they apparently, I'd like to see it firsthand myself, but they apparently they have a very good culture there, where they include their workers.
It looks like we've got a question here from Tony. With the capped time and materials model, what do you do if the customer decides really early that they have enough, and how does this affect long-term planning for you guys? That's an interesting question, and we have had situations like this. If the customer decides that they have enough, that's fine. In our situation, we've dealt with that by, in fact, we put that in as a clause within our contracts, that the capped time and materials gives a lot of freedom to the client, and if they do decide at some point that they have enough and that they want to stop development, that they can actually do that.
And I think, going back to what we were saying about Toyota, I think that having some clause in our contract, because of course it's in the client's interest for us to get the work done sooner, or or under budget, and so I think we should talk maybe as a team about introducing some incentives for us to deliver what the client needs sooner, or under budget, and then work out that reward system with the client. So like I say, if we come in under budget, we split the differences, and we still get rewarded for for a very successful project.
Well, what I've found in our situation quite a lot of time, because we are working with these capped time and materials contracts, that if the client decides they have enough functionality in place, they quite often say, well, we have enough functionality and we still have budget, so we want to put that budget into user testing and enhancing some of the functionality that we already have in place. And that's the way it's always worked for us so far, and who's to say down the road it might be a little bit different. But so far it's working out for us, and it's pretty good. And because the client has that freedom, it does create quite a bit of trust. And he also asked, how does that affect long-term planning for us? Well, at the moment, so far it hasn't been an issue, because
we usually have something waiting in the wings, and we can bring that on faster. And
exactly, and the clients have chosen to use their remaining budget for enhancements and stuff like that. So
it does create issues if we go over time, of course, and we do have to reschedule, just like any team would.
That's the thing, if you're coming to the end of the budget, or even if you're not where you thought you'd be halfway through the project, that's what this collaboration, when this collaboration comes into play as well, and you actually talk to the client about what's the situation, because everything is absolutely transparent, and they're with you on this journey, so it shouldn't be a surprise for them either. So you just negotiate at that point. Well, what can we do? What isn't as important as we thought it would be? What can we push down? And that's where the prioritizing of work really comes into it. So we haven't been burnt by these contracts ourselves, and nobody has left, say, 3/4 of the way through a project and taken that bit of the budget with them. So we've been quite fortunate in that regards, but it's just
I mean, it's interesting at the moment. We've got some guys working we're doing some work for who are just exploring the possibilities of this way of working, and so we're just doing one sprint with them.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, obviously I don't want to jinx this, but we do this quite a bit with people, and they often they just want to see how this way works and see what's possible, and you know, a lot of the time we get a good result, and the product owner or the company will want to continue working with us. That causes a whole different set of problems, because obviously we need to then rejig our schedules again, or you know, work out when it is on the horizon that they can get that work scheduled.
Exactly, and I mean that's part of the benefit of being a small company as well, because our planning is quite flexible, and that's a bit of a luxury that being a small company. Well, it's one of the benefits of being a small company, is that you can be flexible in that way, and we don't do very long-term planning. We do some sort of vague planning, but that's constantly changing, really.
I mean, that's the Agile way as well. You don't really, you have a good idea of what you're going to do in the next 3 months, and then each subsequent 3 months out, you have less of an idea. It's just, and that's good planning in general, and most good project managers would adopt the further out you're looking, the more volatility there is in, the plan.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's just accepted.
Just keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, exactly. Just before we stop talking for today, I just wanted to bring up the fact that Nathan often talks about fractals in Agile. In the way that kind of it's a there's a pattern within a pattern within a pattern, and so on. And these contracts often. So we have the contract at the project level, but then we also have the contracts that get formed between the product owner and the team as they start to build the project, or build the software, and that they're usually around the user story. And what's interesting, I've been working with a team at the moment who have just converted to Agile, and we're going through an Agile transformation with them. And they've still got some story, they've still got some requirements, if you like, that are held over from the old way of doing things. And they've got these, like I saw one today. It was a huge kind of detailed screenshot and requirements for this major report that they want generated out of their visual report they want generated out of their system. And the problem we've got now with the product owner is negotiating what's of highest value, because we have to break this work down. That we can't deliver this entire thing, this epic in one go. They have to break it into stories and do it within sprints. Now we've got this whole problem of renegotiating that contract, because that contract was formed 8 months ago, and now they've got to get it built. They have to build the highest value first, and the product owner thinks everything's of equal importance. There's that same story that we were talking about earlier, where they had 300 stories and they're all of equal value and priority. And so it's just interesting to see how this customer collaboration over contract negotiation kind of filters down into the smaller chunks of what you do within a project
absolutely.
itself. And it's really good to remind the customer and the team at that point, this is a collaboration the whole way through. And you want to avoid forming those contracts as much as possible, because contracts just turn into litigation when they fail,
Exactly.
And you spend more time litigating than you do actually solving the problem.
It's interesting, actually, because the people do ask me quite a few times what problems do you run into when you're running Scrum projects, and it can be a variety of things, like what you just described, or a product owner who's not available, or teams who work separately and kind of blame each other for a situation. But everything that the sort of core of all those issues is almost always communication.
That's right.
If you have communication lines open all the time and people are actually using them, and because there's no point having somebody sitting beside you if you're not talking to them. But as long as everybody's communicating, it really solves so many of these problems.
And all I know is, having spent so many years in the industry, is time and time again, the customer often doesn't know exactly what they want until they see it. And so anything in between that, requirements, documents, mock-ups, they all have their user stories. They all have their place but keep them light, keep the collaboration heavy. Keep the focus on collaboration. Stop trying to form contracts, deliver something that the customer can see as soon as possible, and accept that that isn't necessarily going to be the right the first time,
Yeah.
and it's going to need to be revised or reworked or enhanced or elaborated, and accept that.
Yeah.
Software isn't tangible until it's on a screen.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And the most difficult situation I've seen to conquer in agile projects is when people are working in different time zones, because that communication. I mean, there's nothing you can do. You can't bend time. So that's
right.
the most difficult one to solve. When people ever ask me to help them with a problem because they've got somebody working in a time zone 12 hours behind them, there's no easy answer there because it's really tricky. So we have another question from Tony. Just found this in the week. Great for helping that everything is of equal value discussion.
Great. I'll take. So is he included a link?
I don't see a link in there, but I'll follow up on that, Tony.
Yeah, if you could post a link, Tony, if you've got something, that'd be great.
I do like that because we often need help with the everything is of equal value discussion. That's something that pops up a huge amount. So I'd be keen to see that. So I think it's just about us for
Today,
this week. Yeah.
Thanks. I really enjoyed today's discussion.
Yeah, it was good. And so in the future, we're going to try and concentrate just on one topic per episode of the board. So again, if anybody's watching and wants to, whether you're watching on YouTube or live stream, and you have a topic you'd like to see discussed, please leave it in the comments, and we'll try and address that in future episodes. So thank you, and see you next time.
See you.